Hey interwebs, it's Jackie K. And today we're going to take it back from whatever progress we've been making in Celeste to cover something that I've been meaning to for a while. Something that I felt deserved its own video, but may or may not be depending on how long I spend rambling on about it. And that's a particular feature that Celeste has that other platformers might not, especially that of platformers that have a more technical skill level. And that's called Assist Mode. I think I'll start by just letting the game explain it. Assist Mode allows you to modify the game's rules fit to your specific needs. This includes options such as slowing the game speed, granting yourself invincibility or infinite stamina, and skipping chapters entirely. Celeste is intended to be a challenging and rewarding experience. If the default game proves inaccessible to you, we hope that you can still find that experience with Assist Mode. What does that look like in execution? Well, let's just dive in and take a look. Now, I keep feeling like I keep trying to try this over myself, and this is a several attempt take for something that shouldn't take several attempts. But as you can see, when you have Assist Mode on, you can pause the game at any time and toggle the settings as you please. If I feel like the game if I'm in a situation where the game requires reflexes, they're just a little bit beyond my level of reflecting, I could turn down the speed, and I have a little bit more time to react to certain platforming motions that I might not have been able to do otherwise. It's not just like an on or off thing, like you can toggle it all the way down to like 50%, or just barely make the game slower. Like, you really have to pay attention to actually see that the game's actually slower at this point, but that might just be enough time for people to react to certain things. In addition, you can toggle around with dashing in a similar motion. You can give yourself infinite dashing if you really want. As you can see right here, the crystals are completely null and void, and the world is essentially my oyster at this point. But I can still die. If I really wanted to, though, even that is no longer an issue to me. Even the death of falling can be completely negated if I really want to in Assist Mode. But like I said, the Assist Mode Celeste is more so supposed to be like a toggle to adjust to exactly what you need. So you don't have a situation where you just need, say, this is way too much, but I need a little bit of assistance in order to make the game a bit more playable. Maybe I could just give myself 2 air dashes instead of 1. And maybe I'm doing just fine with the platforming, but like I just feel like I got cheesed out of some technical things by just not having enough stamina, just barely enough. I could just play the game with infinite stamina if I really wanted. And that's the beauty of what they intend to try to do with Celeste. They want to make the game challenging because it does pull into the game's narrative. However, you don't have to have it that way. Like, if the game's so hard to the point where you can't even beat it, you can't even enjoy it, then you do have Assist Mode to play around with those features. I do feel like there's some unintended consequences to the way Assist Mode works. It's not even like cheesing it out as much as just like, it brings me back to the good old days of retro games where you could have cheats on in order to play certain parts of the game. My most prominent example, even though there's probably more examples in like the NES and NES era, is with Donkey Kong 64 for the Nintendo 64. There's a part of that game where you had these collectibles, and as you got more and more of them, you got various cheat codes that you could toggle on and off from the pause or from the main menu as you please, including some of them like allowing for infinite coins or infinite crystal coconuts, which was how you use your special abilities in the games. There's just a lot of fun to have with all that. Especially things like the infinite air dash thing brings me back to a time in Donkey Kong 64 where I would just turn on the crystal coconut cheat, have Deacon jump into his ability barrel, and fly around with a jetpack for hours at a time, exploring the entire overworld in that place. It's pretty cool times, and that's kind of part of the reason why I like this so much. Like, it not only makes the game more accessible to people who need it, maybe gives people a little bit of an edge for a situation that they just can barely beat on their own, but it kind of gives a callback to the good old days of cheats. And on top of that, I feel like there's part of it at least they could implement into the narrative of the game itself. And that's specifically with assist mode having 2 air dashes. Because I definitely uploaded this. This recording is taking place well after being Celeste's main story. So you know the whole thing about Madeline and Badeline coming together, working together, and that's how you get the ability to do a second dash. Well, the thing is, if you go back to some of these earlier levels, you don't have the ability to second dash even after playing through the other modes. Like, what I'm doing right now, even though I've beaten the game, if I come back to this level normally, I would still only have 1 dash, even though, like, lore-wise, I should be able to do double dashes at any time. Minus, like, Chapter 7, where they actually have plot in accordance to that. Well, having assist mode and turning on a double dash kind of just brings me back to that particular mode, or that particular mindset. And it's a fair compromise between, like, having the ability to do these 2 dashes whenever I please, without completely breaking the game. Because, let's be honest, some of these levels would be incredibly broken if you could just do 2 dashes whenever you please. Case in point. Well, now I'm just like being... I wouldn't even say showing off, just being stupid. And on top of that, like, I think there's a whole speedrunning section just built around the whole concept of being able to do both your dashes throughout the entire main story. I kind of even got into it before I really got real deep into the Celeste speedrunning community. Like, there's still a lot that I haven't really done in it. I haven't even really officially uploaded my first speedrun onto any platform. But what kind of helped me get interested in it, just like the idea of having it with 2 dashes, made the whole concept of speedrunning Celeste a lot less intimidating, because I don't think I would have been able to do all the technical stuff, but it seemed like there was a lot of fun things you could do just from the ability to be able to dash twice. So through the double dashing, long story short, really actually got me into Celeste speedrunning. And I hope as I get closer to being done with all the post-game stuff, that I can actually do more exploring with Celeste and speedrunning content. Because yeah, as it stands, I'm just doing post-game stuff, and like I already have such a huge backlog in post-game that I don't really even want to get too into streaming stuff and that on Twitch. Plus, like, streaming's kind of like a hard thing for me to get into as is. But still, it'd be nice to have those elements to do it. Maybe someday though, maybe someday we'll be able to have some fun. Actually play around and do some cool tricks with the ability to have 2 dashes. in some of these levels that we're not supposed to. Not quite sure how that would work quite yet. But as I play around and learn some of the tech, I'm sure we'll eventually get to that point. I think the only other thing I really want to talk about with Celeste's speedrun mode is a little bit in regards to the other side of the coin, the things that some people might have a little bit of beef with this existing. But just for the fun of it, I think I might do a post-commentate and just find some of the most technical areas in this game and play around with the assist mode a bit more. So just some points I wanted to add at the end in regards with assist mode. I do know that some people might just be digging up old buried grounds by bringing this up. But I know some people, back when this game released, kind of had some controversy with assist mode. But then again, the game community always had this weird controversy whenever anything comes in that could possibly make a game easier. Which isn't really a bad thing. I can understand the point of having skill, but as long as the accessibility is optional and it comes down to playing the game, a game's enjoyment shouldn't be completely negated by a skill gate. I definitely get the whole point of you can't really boast about a game the same way if you had a handicap or not, but you shouldn't restrict the people who can play the game solely based on skill. That's at least my take on the whole matter. And like I said, like, it's not just a mode to make things easier on people. There's other benefits to it and kind of other fun things that you can do because of it. And I think that alone makes it a unique and interesting tool in and of itself. The more options you have to play around with in the game, the more ways you can actually expand the gameplay, the more ways you can make the gameplay unique. So that's why I kind of stand by this particular mode, even if I never really wanted to use it for the sake of the Let's Play. And that's all I really got to talk about for today. Thank you all for tuning in, and hope to see you for some more Celeste sometime soon. I know they haven't been as frequently uploaded as they used to be, but we're just gonna work with what we can, try and make it work out. Take care.